not for diplomacy, but for survival. And Eleanor's death had lit the final fuse. Within 3 weeks, Operation Retribution was activated. Human warships, black and silent, emerged from the shadows of gas giants like phantoms. They didn't issue warnings. They didn't negotiate. They eliminated. It started with Outpost Z9, a heavily fortified Varelian colony on the edge of their empire. It took Earth's strike team 7 minutes to breach its shields and reduce the city to molten slag. Not a single civilian was touched. The military, however, was annihilated. But Earth didn't stop there. They moved with terrifying precision, wiping out weapons depots, sabotaging warp relays, hijacking interstellar broadcasts to show the truth. Eleanor's bruised body, the Council's lies, and Earth's message. We are not your cattle. We are not your inferiors. We are the storm you begged to awaken. The Galactic Council met in panic. 12 species, thousands of years of combined rule, and not one of them had a plan for this. Because this wasn't diplomacy. This wasn't war by their standards. This was brutality, pure and calculated, and it was human. Ambassador Tarek, a four-eyed diplomat from the Sharan Dominion, sat shaking in the main hall, watching the footage of Earth's latest assault. The screen showed a Varelian war fleet, 40 ships, surrounded by 5 human cruisers. The battle lasted 9 minutes. The Varelians didn't win. None of them did. Tarek whispered. They're monsters. Councillor Dresk of the Varelians slammed a fist on the table. No, they're animals, primitive, they don't understand order. But in the corner, Councillor Cashel, a crystalline being from the Orinex Syndicate, spoke calmly. No, they understand too well. We taught them order. We taught them structure. And now they're using it to destroy us. As the room fell into heavy silence, another broadcast lit up the central display. This time it wasn't an attack. It was a face. A human face. General Marcus Hale. Cold. Steady. Unforgiving. He looked directly into the camera, his voice low and surgical. You executed a schoolteacher. We executed your arrogance. We're not here to negotiate. We're here to remind you. Earth may have been quiet, but we never forgot how to fight. You wanted fear? Now you have it. The screen cut to black. Not one word was spoken in the chamber for over 6 minutes, because for the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. There was an unease spreading across the stars. You could feel it in the way the trade ships slowed near human space. You could hear it in the static-filled whispers across deep space comms. Even the pirates were quiet now, vanishing from routes they used to dominate. Something had changed. It wasn't just fear. It was respect, laced with dread. Earth had always been underestimated. Even after they'd terraformed Mars and pushed colonies as far as the Gliese systems, the Council still thought of humans as an unstable, emotional species. Too impulsive to govern, too chaotic to ever pose real threat. And yet now, it was the Council that couldn't sleep. Back on Earth, in the towering city of New Geneva, General Marcus Hale stood in the command center, eyes locked on a holographic map of the Orion sector. He wasn't celebrating. There was no joy in vengeance, just cold calculation. The humans hadn't just retaliated. They'd sent a message. But Hale knew it wouldn't end there. They'll regroup, he muttered, arms crossed. They'll come at us from every angle next time. Beside him stood Admiral Cora Lynn, Earth's youngest fleet commander. Her voice was sharp, clipped, like every word carried weight. They're afraid, Marcus. They won't move without unity, and that's something they've never had. Hale glanced at her. They'll find unity in fear, just like we did. Silence stretched between them as the map flickered, tracking enemy movements, or rather, the lack of them. The Council had gone radio silent, Entire sectors had blacked out. Spies stopped reporting. It was like the galaxy itself had hit pause, waiting to see what Earth would do next. And Earth wasn't done. Operation Retribution's second phase wasn't about war, it was about exposure. Across thousands of Council-aligned worlds, human agents dropped encrypted data bombs into communication hubs. The files contained evidence of centuries of corruption, Council elites trafficking entire species for labor, silencing rebellions through engineered famines, collapsing ecosystems for resource monopolies. And in the middle of it all, the footage of Eleanor Grant, tortured, broken, left as a warning. The reaction was instant. Riots exploded on the Varelian homeworld, citizens screaming in the streets, burning the Council's flags. On the Charon moons, protesters flooded the Capitol steps, demanding an end to Council control. The Orinex Trading Alliance collapsed in a single day. One message kept surfacing across all frequencies. If Earth fights back, why can't we? Back on Proxima Station, Ambassador Yara Den, Earth's representative to the Council, sat alone in her quarters, watching the chaos unfold. She'd spent her entire career trying to keep peace between Earth and the stars, always the voice of reason in every meeting. Now, she was the harbinger of war. Her comm panel buzzed. Again, it was her assistant. "The Council has requested your presence, Ambassador. Emergency session." Yara sighed. "Let me guess. Damage control?" "They say they want a ceasefire." Yara narrowed her eyes. "After what they did?" "They say they're willing to talk." She stood slowly, straightening her coat. "Good. Then let's give them something to talk about." The Council chamber hadn't changed in centuries. A towering dome, filled with golden light, carved with alien symbols from hundreds of species. But this time it felt colder. The seats were half empty. Some members hadn't even dared show up in person, only holograms remained. Yara walked in like a storm wrapped in silence. No entourage, no guards. Just her and the truth. Councillor Dresk of the Varelians stood to speak, his voice shaking despite his effort to sound dominant. "Ambassador Den, we are deeply regretful of recent events. What happened to your citizen was an error of judgment. We failed to recognize the significance of—" "Don't!" Yara cut in sharply. "Don't you dare reduce what happened to Eleanor as an error. You tortured and murdered a civilian. Then dumped her corpse like garbage. That's not a mistake. That's policy." The chamber went still. Councillor Tarek, who had once laughed at Earth's entry into the galactic fold, spoke quietly. "What do you want, Ambassador?" Yara leaned forward. "We're not here to ask. We're here to demand." She took a data rod from her coat and placed it on the center console. The chamber's screens lit up instantly, showing planetary schematics, troop deployments, and classified communications between Council leaders. Yara's voice dropped. "These are your crimes. For every world you enslaved, every colony you bled dry, every race you silenced. Earth is broadcasting this to the galaxy in 3 hours, unless—" Dresk snapped. "Unless what?" "Unless the Council disbands, entirely, effective immediately." The silence that followed was almost deafening. Councillor Cashel finally spoke, her crystalline body humming with energy. "You're asking us to surrender centuries of governance." "I'm not asking," Yara said. "You didn't ask, Eleanor. We're done being polite." Tarek's hologram flickered. "And if we refuse?" Yara's eyes burned cold. "Then Earth will do to every Council-aligned world what we did to Outpost Z9, but this time, we won't stop with the military." The Council sat frozen. They had expected rage. They weren't ready for power. 3 days later, Earth's warships held position across 7 sectors. Not a single shot was fired. They didn't need to. The galaxy had already shifted. Species long held in the Council's grip began rising, emboldened by Earth's defiance. Revolution broke out across the Valari Belt, where mining colonies overthrew their Council-appointed governors. On Dreska 4, once a proud Varelian outpost, the entire population declared independence and requested Earth's protection. Hale stood on the bridge of the warship Erebus, watching as planetary defense networks powered down across Council space. "They're folding," Lynn reported. "They won't admit it publicly, but every system we've monitored is standing down. They've lost the will to fight." "Because they've finally seen what we're capable of," Hale replied. "No speeches, no debates, just force." There was a pause. Then Lynn asked quietly, "And what happens after?" Hale turned toward the star-streaked window. "After? We build something better. We protect the weak. We teach the galaxy what Earth had to learn the hard way." "But can we be better?" she asked. "After everything we've done?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "We didn't start this war, Cora, but we ended it on our terms. That's how survival works." Back in New Geneva, the streets were alive, not with parties, but with purpose. Humans had seen the edge of the abyss and pulled themselves back. The cities lit up not with celebration, but with rebuilding. Memorials rose for Eleanor Grant across every human colony. Her name became a vow, whispered in the training halls of new soldiers and the council chambers of rising leaders. Never again. The council never recovered. The Varelian conglomerate fractured into regional states, most begging Earth for non-aggression pacts. The Orinex Syndicate withdrew from galactic politics entirely. The Charon attempted to cling to neutrality, but even they were forced to concede when 3 of their moons declared independence and flew Earth's flag. And so the galaxy changed, not with a bang, but with a breath held by every species watching Earth reshape the future with brutal, beautiful clarity. Years later, historians would ask, how did Earth do it? The answer was always the same. They were pushed too far, and then they pushed back. But only those who were there knew the truth. Earth didn't just retaliate. They evolved. They took the pain, the insult, the blood, and turned it into firepower, into strategy, into something undeniable. The Galactic Council tried to bury Earth in fear. Instead, Earth buried the Council in history. The first mistake the Galactic Council made was assuming humans would break. The second was assuming they wouldn't rebuild. 2 years had passed since Operation Retribution. The Council, once feared as the galaxy's unshakable authority, now existed only in fractured whispers. Earth hadn't just torn it down. They'd made sure it stayed down. But peace wasn't peace. Not really. What Earth won through force, it now had to defend through presence and power, because even when tyrants fall, the ghosts they leave behind often crawl into new skin. On the rim of what was once Virelian territory, a station called Redhold floated in silence above the desolate planet of Karas 3. It wasn't on any official map. It wasn't supposed to exist. But intelligence picked up encrypted signals there. Bursts of data, abnormal energy spikes, rumors of ships bearing the old Council sigils. That's where Captain Elira Voss came in. A product of the new Earth fleet's rapid expansion. Elira wasn't like the older officers, the war-hardened ones who remembered Earth before the retaliation. She hadn't seen Eleanor's body. She hadn't watched the Council's cruelty firsthand. But she believed. She believed in the mission, in Earth's promise to never let itself, or anyone else, be trampled again. That's why she accepted a ghost hunt into dead space. That's why she now stood at the edge of Redhold's docking bay, pulse rifle at her side, watching a strange, unmarked freighter slowly open its airlock with a hiss. "Eyes open," she whispered into comms. Something about this smells wrong. Her second, Lieutenant Cale Dre, gave a dry chuckle. Everything smells wrong in Council space, even their silence. The ramp lowered. Out stepped a single figure, tall, humanoid, wrapped in a gray cloak. "Don't shoot," the voice rasped. Distorted by a translator, "I've come to speak for the survivors." "Survivors of what?" Illyra asked, gun steady. "The Council," the figure said, "and those who wish to bring it back." They brought him aboard. His name, or the name he gave, was Vorin Tell. Half Varelian, half human, a hybrid that would have been exterminated under Council law not too long ago. He wore scars that weren't from battle, but from existence. Burns, acid welts, cybernetic replacements that looked grafted without consent. "Why would anyone want to bring back the Council?" Illyra asked him, once he was under interrogation. Vorin leaned back in his chair, a humorless smile on his face. "Because for some, monsters make excellent masters, and they fear what Earth represents now." Kyle folded his arms. "Strength?" Vorin shook his head. "Change. The Council was brutal, yes. But it was stable, predictable. It kept the powerful rich and the weak in line. Earth didn't just break that. They shattered the illusion that it had to be that way." "And now?" Illyra asked. Vorin's expression darkened. "Now the slavers are out of work. The warlords are building empires. And the ones who miss the old chains, they're gathering." Illyra's stomach twisted. "Where?" Vorin slid a chip across the table. "I'm here to trade. I give you the location of the restoration movement, you give me protection. Because once they find out I talked, I'm dead." She eyed the chip warily. "Why us? Why not hide in a colony somewhere?" "Because Earth doesn't abandon its enemies, or its allies. That's what scares them most." The intel was solid. In the cold outer systems, a fleet was forming. It wasn't large yet, but it was dangerous. Old Varelian warships retrofitted with new tech. Rogue engineers from the Shran species. Even whispers of ex-Council admirals working under false IDs. They called themselves the Restoration Movement. Their goal wasn't revenge. It was reconstruction. To rebuild the Council without the mistakes. A smarter Council. A harsher one. One that would never let Earth rise again. Admiral Lin reviewed the findings at Earth Command, her fingers tightening on the edge of the holotable. "They're not hiding anymore," she muttered. "They're organizing." Hale stood behind her, older now, wearier, but still sharp as ever. "I told them this would happen. We left a vacuum." "You wanted to wipe out everything," Lin said. "But some of us still believe in mercy." Hale looked at her. "Mercy doesn't work on those who only understand fear." Lin sighed. "And if we attack first, we become what they said we were. Tyrants, dictators. We didn't start this, Cora. We never start it. But we always end it," she finished for him. He nodded slowly. "We need to make an example. Something loud." She paused, then looked up. "Redhold?" "No," he said. "Their leadership. Cut the head off before it grows teeth." The operation was codenamed Silent Lance. It was precision warfare. No mass fleets, no scorched planets. Just a needle pointed straight at the movement's throat. Earth's best infiltration teams were deployed. Black Ops squads enhanced with psionic interfaces, neural combat threads, cloaked tech. Captain Illyra Voss was tapped to lead one of the core teams. She didn't hesitate. "This is what we trained for," she told her crew. "Not just war, but the end of it. We finish this, and no child ever grows up under a Council flag again." The target was a mobile command station known as the Spire, a massive vessel converted from a broken asteroid, held together with salvaged Varelian tech, and powered by fusion cores stolen from abandoned council outposts. The spire was where the Restoration leaders met. It was also where Earth planned to deliver a message. They arrived under cloak, sliding past sensor nets and dead satellites. The operation went smoothly at first. Their breaching team entered through an exhaust shaft, bypassed internal security systems, and reached the central control deck within 12 minutes. And that's when it all went to hell. Alarms blared, doors locked, turrets dropped from the ceiling and opened fire. Elira ducked behind cover, shouting into comms, "They knew we were coming! Fall back! Get to fallback point Echo!" But it was too late. Kyle took a round through the leg. 2 others were shredded in the corridor before they could even draw a breath. And then a voice filled the spire's halls, slow, deliberate, venomous. "Ah, Earth's children. You're more like us than you think?" It was High Regent Solace, the ex-council general now leading the Restoration. He was supposed to be dead, executed after the war. Turns out Earth wasn't the only one good at faking reports. "You burned our homes," Solace continued, "so now we'll burn your legacy, and the galaxy will thank us." Elira patched through to orbit. "Fleet Command, Spire is compromised. Enemy is alive and active. Request immediate strike. Burn the ship." Lynn's voice came through, cold and certain. "Are you still inside?" "Yes," Elira replied. "But if we don't end this now, others will pay later." There was a pause, then, "Confirmed. Strike inbound. You have 60 seconds." Kyle coughed beside her, bleeding badly. "You serious? You're gonna die for this?" "I'm not dying," Elira said. "I'm making sure no one else has to." She pulled Kyle into a maintenance shaft, sealed the blast door behind them, and braced herself. Outside, Earth's flagship Sovereign Spear fired its payload. It was not a missile. It was a singularity bomb, prototype tech, barely tested, but effective. In an instant, the spire folded in on itself, crushed by the force of collapsed space, imploding like a tin can under a black hole's breath. Nothing remained, except silence and stars. 3 days later, Elira woke up in a med bay on Sovereign Spear. She was alive, barely. Kale had made it too. One leg gone, replaced with synth bone, but still smirking. Lynn visited her personally. "You broke protocol," she said flatly. "I saved your galaxy," Elira replied, her voice hoarse. Lynn stared at her, then nodded once. "We're giving you command of your own fleet," she said. "There will be others like Solace. You'll be hunting them." Elira blinked. "You're not ending the war?" Lynn's voice turned soft. "This is the peace we get, Elira. Not silence, but vigilance." And so Earth didn't rest. They rebuilt, they watched, they prepared, because they knew the truth no one else wanted to speak aloud. You don't win freedom by asking for it. You take it, you protect it, and when they come for it again, you remind them why they should have left Earth alone. The universe didn't applaud when Earth crushed the Restoration. There were no parades. No galactic ovations, just quiet, uneasy, watchful, suspicious. Because while Earth's fleets now sailed through star lanes unchallenged, not everyone was thrilled by their rise. Some feared them, others envied them. And a few, especially those who once bowed under the Council's control, started asking a dangerous question. Is Earth just another empire, wearing a hero's face? That question began to spread, especially in the outer colonies. The border planets Earth had promised to protect after the fall of the Council. Worlds like Theraxis Prime, a swamp-covered jungle planet once mined into dust by Council contracts, now left mostly abandoned. They were supposed to be rebuilding. But instead, their citizens were starving. Pirate gangs had filled the power vacuum. Lawlessness reigned. Earth's ships hadn't returned in months. So when a group of Thraxis citizens launched a desperate transmission, broadcasting across unencrypted channels, begging for food, medicine, even basic water purifiers, everyone saw it. And more importantly, Earth didn't respond. Not for 6 days. It was enough time for the whispers to begin. At Earth Command in New Geneva, Admiral Cora Lynn watched the footage silently. A young girl, no more than 10, speaking into a shaky camera, her skin pale and cracked with dehydration. "Please," the child said. "You said Earth protects us. You said we mattered." Lynn rubbed her temples. "Why the hell didn't this reach me sooner?" An aide fidgeted nervously. Thraxis isn't classified as a Tier 1 emergency zone. Our AI flagged it as political noise. Political. Lynn's fist slammed the table. "They're starving. I want a relief fleet prepped in 2 hours. Ma'am, with all due respect, we're stretched thin. The Archive border flared up again. Then reroute civilian haulers. Send private contractors. I don't care if we have to carry water in buckets. We respond." Lynn stood, her voice low and sharp. "We do not become what we destroyed." But not everyone agreed. In the back rooms of Earth's new political body, the Terran Assembly, some began arguing that Earth was doing too much, that perhaps this was the time to consolidate, not extend. One of those voices was Counselor Gerard Vance, a former diplomat turned politician who never wore a uniform, but had mastered the art of power. He stood before the assembly, his voice calm, persuasive. "How many more ships will we send to dying colonies before our own suffer? Earth is not the galaxy's janitor. We toppled a tyrant, yes, but we are not a charity. We cannot be everything to everyone." Some clapped, others looked uncomfortable. In the shadows of that chamber, the first seeds of division took root. Captain Elira Voss had been listening from a side room. Her face didn't change, but her hands tightened behind her back. She didn't care about politics. Not really. She cared about facts. And the fact was, Earth had made a promise. She'd nearly died on the spire to uphold it. She'd buried friends for it. She'd watched systems burn so Earth could rise not just as a victor, but as something better. Now, it felt like that promise was slipping. Later that night, Elira met with General Marcus Hale on a rooftop overlooking New Geneva's skyline. The stars above were quiet, but her voice wasn't. "They're softening," she said. "They're getting comfortable." Hale nodded slowly. "Peace has a way of blinding people. They forget how close we came to extinction. They forget what it cost." "What happens when they stop showing up?" she asked. "What happens when the outer colonies decide Earth's just another lie?" Hale didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Then someone reminds them who we are, why we fought, why we're different." "Who?" she asked. He turned toward her. "You." Elira didn't wait for authorization. Within 48 hours, she assembled a volunteer relief convoy, 6 ships loaded with supplies, medics, and engineers. Not Earth Navy, not official government action, just people who still believed the fight meant something. Among them was Lieutenant Cale Dre, still limping from his synthetic leg, but as sarcastic as ever. "Can't believe I came out of a coma for this," he muttered, checking cargo logs. "You didn't come back for Earth," Elira said. "You came back for the people Earth promised to protect." Kyle grinned. "You always this noble, or is it just when I'm around?" She rolled her eyes. "Just load the damn water filters." They departed without fanfare, without press, just a quiet jump into deep space toward a forgotten world. When they arrived at Thraxis Prime, it was worse than expected. The orbital satellites were long dead. The atmosphere was thick with pollution clouds. The colony outposts were crumbling shells, their power grids flickering like dying candles. But what hit hardest were the people. Thin, pale, eyes hollow from weeks without enough food. Children who didn't speak because they'd forgotten how. And yet, they were alive. And when they saw the Earth insignia on the ships, they wept. It didn't take long to start the offload. Medics set up triage centers. Engineers worked around the clock restoring water lines. Food was distributed in crates marked with Earth's rising phoenix symbol. One woman, old and wrinkled, grabbed Elira's hand and kissed it. "You came," she whispered. "I thought the stars forgot us." Elira just squeezed her hand. "We never forget," she said. "We don't get to." But the pirates didn't forget either. On the third night, as Theraxis slept for the first time with lights on in months, a warship dropped out of hyperspace above the planet. It wasn't massive, but it was fast, brutal, and desperate. The Iron Serpent, led by ex-Council enforcer Threx Varn, who now carved a life raiding abandoned worlds, stealing tech, and selling slaves to whoever paid best. They sent no warning. They opened fire. 2 of Elira's cargo ships exploded before she even reached the command tent. Kale was already shouting orders, dragging people behind blast doors. "Where's orbital coverage?" Elira barked. "Dead! No defense grid here. We're sitting ducks." "Then we become porcupines," she growled. "Arm everyone. We hold the landing zones. No civilians die today." The battle wasn't elegant. It was chaos. Guns welded from scrap. Civilians with old council rifles. Medical tents turned into bunkers. But Earth's people had something the pirates didn't. Resolve. They held the perimeter through the first wave, then the second. Elira was everywhere, dragging wounded, giving orders, firing from a rooftop with dead aim. Kyle took a graze across the shoulder, but stayed on his feet. Then the pirates brought in their final move, a ground mech, retrofitted with plasma launchers and old council shielding. It walked straight through the front barricades, lighting up the night sky. Elira stared at it, breath heaving. "No anti-tank rounds. We're cooked." Kyle grinned through the blood. "Yeah, but they're standing on a methane line." "What?" He tossed her a detonator. "Welcome to Swamp Planet." She didn't hesitate. 30 seconds later, the pirate mech stepped forward, and the ground beneath it exploded, fire blooming into the night as the entire valley erupted with force. Silence followed. Then cheers, then something deeper. Hope. When the Terran assembly finally arrived, weeks late, they found Theraxis secured, fed, and rebuilding. All because of 6 ships, and a woman who still remembered the promise Earth made. Counselor Vance visited in person. He found Elira in a mechanic's tent, covered in grease, helping repair a child's breathing mask. "You disobeyed protocol," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "I followed purpose." He handed her a datapad. "The assembly voted. You've been promoted. Rear Admiral." She raised an eyebrow. "So now I get rewarded for insubordination?" "No," he said. "You get recognized for reminding us who we were supposed to be." He paused, then added, "The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was loud." Across the galaxy, the footage spread. Of humans rebuilding ruins, of a pirate fleet crushed not by military might, but by belief. The girl who begged Earth to come? Her message was now part of every academy lecture across human space. One line repeated more than any other, "You said we mattered." And Earth finally proved that they meant it. Theraxis was the spark. What started as a quiet, unsanctioned relief mission turned into a symbol, a reminder to the galaxy that Earth was still different, still dangerous, and still human in ways no empire could ever be. But sparks don't always light torches. Sometimes they start wildfires. And that fire was now spreading across the galaxy. Colonies that had once begged for Earth's protection began to rise. but not always in Earth's image. Some declared independence. Others claimed they could defend themselves better than Earth ever had. On the mining world of Sendrix IV, labor unions overthrew their colonial overseers and seized the port. On Lorax, a hybrid species known as the Anthari expelled all human representatives and renamed the capital Ashankel, Freedom's Tooth. At first, Earth welcomed the revolution. It meant the Council's bones were still breaking. But the problem wasn't revolution. It was what came after. Admiral Cora Lynn stared at a star map glowing in her office aboard Earth Command. Half a dozen systems were blinking in red. Flashpoints of rebellion, conflict, political schisms. Some used Earth's name to justify their violence. Others rejected Earth entirely. Her voice was tired when she spoke to her chief aide. "Where's Captain Voss now?" "En route to the Loran Expanse," the aide replied. "There was a flare-up in the Anthari region. They've taken hostages." "Who?" "Earth diplomats. One of them's a historian. The others are peacekeepers." Lynn closed her eyes. "I thought the Anthari weren't hostile." "They weren't," the aide said, "until someone bombed one of their shrines. They think it was a human extremist group, a retaliation cell." "So now we're fighting ourselves," she whispered. The aide didn't respond. He didn't need to. Earth's legacy was cracking at the edges. They'd beaten the old monsters. But new ones were wearing their skin. Elira Voss didn't sleep much anymore. Not since Theraxis. Not since she'd been promoted, praised, turned into a symbol of Earth's righteous power. And definitely not since she'd started seeing Earth's insignia being used by fanatics who believed violence was the only truth the galaxy understood. She stood on the bridge of the EWS Solara, watching as her task force approached the Loran Expanse, 3 sleek destroyers flying in tight formation, engines humming with latent power. Kyle limped onto the deck behind her. "We're getting good at this," he said. "Another powder keg to defuse. Maybe this time we bring wine." Elira didn't smile. "They've taken civilians," she said flatly. "We don't negotiate with people who break that rule." Kyle nodded, his tone sobering. "Think it was really humans who hit the shrine?" "Doesn't matter," she replied. "They think it was. That's enough to light the match." He leaned closer. "So what's the plan?" She didn't look away from the stars. "We talk first, and if that fails, we remind them." The Anthari Enclave wasn't like any other species Earth had encountered. Tall, reptilian humanoid hybrids with bioluminescent skin and triple-lidded eyes, the Anthari were born from decades of forced breeding experiments during the Council's peak. They were engineered to obey, bred for subservience. But when the Council fell, the Anthari didn't rise with gratitude. They rose with rage, because Earth had killed the masters, but left the cages. Now their leader, Varesh Kul, ruled from a crystalline tower carved into the cliffs of Ashankel. He spoke only through ceremonial voice keepers, never directly. He claimed this kept his words sacred. When Elira and her team landed, they were greeted not by weapons, but by silence. 1,000 Anthari lined the path to the tower, eyes glowing blue in the setting sun. No one moved. No one blinked. It felt less like a welcome and more like a judgment. Inside, Varesh Kul's voice boomed through a massive amphitheater. "You burned our gods," he said, "and now you come in peace?" Elira stood at the center, unarmed. "We didn't strike the shrine," she said, "but we'll help you find who did." "You wear the symbol of Earth," Varesh Kul growled, "and Earth brought fire once. Now it brings lies." Elira stepped forward. "We didn't come to conquer. We came to stop what the Council started." "Then why do you act like them?" The words echoed through the chamber. For a moment, Elira said nothing. Then, softly, Because the galaxy only listens when we speak with force, and that's what we're trying to change. Back aboard the Solara, tensions spiked. The hostages were moved to a hidden location. Enthari extremists started broadcasting demands across the expanse, a formal trial for war crimes, with Earth as the accused. The Terran Assembly panicked. Councillor Vance called Elira directly. "We cannot allow this. You will retrieve our people by any means necessary." Elira kept her voice even. "A ground assault will spark full rebellion across 5 systems." "I don't care if it sparks a supernova," Vance snapped. "They either release them or we make an example." Elira stared into the comm feed, her voice cold. "We made an example with Eleanor. We made another on the Spire. You want me to keep stacking examples? Where does it end?" Vance leaned in. "That's not your concern, Admiral. Your concern is obedience." The call ended. Kyle looked at her. "What now?" She didn't hesitate. "We do it our way." Elira met Vareshkul again, this time alone. "No soldiers, no tricks," she said. "Just truth." He regarded her in silence, then motioned her forward. They walked through the broken remains of the shrine, shattered crystals, blackened altars. Children swept the rubble with clawed hands. "This was not a church," he said. "It was history, memory, the last place we were allowed to speak freely." Elira crouched beside a broken column. "Earth lost our first city once," she said quietly. "To fire. Not bombs, not war, just greed, and we built again. Not because we forgot, but because we refused to let the fire own us." Vareshkul studied her. "You want the hostages?" "I want peace," she replied, "but I'll fight if you force me." He said nothing for a long moment. Then, "There is one way." The next day, across the Loran expanse, a new broadcast went live. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It was a trial. Elira Voss stood in front of a jury of Enthari elders and spoke for Earth, not defending its wars, not justifying its violence, but owning it. "We brought fire," she said. "We broke chains, but in doing so we scared people into silence. That ends now. Earth will answer. Earth will rebuild, and Earth will never hide behind power again." It was the first time in history a human military officer submitted to a foreign tribunal voluntarily. And it worked. The hostages were released. The extremists lost face. And Earth, for the first time in years, was seen not as a conqueror, but as a participant. Back in New Geneva, the assembly boiled. Councillor Vance slammed his fist on the table. "She submitted our sovereignty to a hostile species. That's a betrayal of everything we stand for." But Lynn only smiled. "No," she said. "It's a return to everything we fought for." Weeks later, Elira returned to Earth. She wasn't greeted with parades. She wasn't decorated. She wasn't even thanked, but she was noticed. By the young, the watching, the ones trying to decide whether Earth was still worth believing in. And that was enough. In a quiet ceremony, Eleanor Grant's niece handed Elira a small pendant. It was scorched and bent, found in the ruins of the embassy where Eleanor died. "She wore this every day," the girl said. "Said it reminded her of home." Elira took it with trembling fingers and wore it beneath her uniform, because she, too, needed to remember what they were fighting for. The galaxy was learning to live without the Council, but it wasn't learning well. Old power vacuums had become black holes. One planet's freedom was another's chaos. Trade routes were unreliable. Law enforcement varied by system. Entire sectors, once bound by the Council's cold grip, now twisted into lawless regions ruled by whoever had the sharpest weapons and the fewest morals. And through it all, Earth remained the center of gravity, respected, feared, envied. But increasingly, Earth also found itself alone. No alliances, no equals, just a burning torch held in a dark galaxy, waiting to see who would try to blow it out. In the Terran Assembly, arguments grew louder. Earth's expansion wasn't just strategic, it was necessary. With colonies relying on Earth for food, security, and infrastructure, the burden was growing unbearable. Earth had become an empire, whether it wanted to or not. And empires? They make enemies. The enemy came quietly. Not with fleets, not with plasma bombs, but with silence. Entire colonies started going dark, communications severed without warning, no distress signals, no explosions. Just systems blinking offline like dying stars. At first, Earth thought it was sabotage. Then one of the vanished colonies was found. Or what was left of it. A recon team discovered Eta X7, a moon colony in the Uranus belt, completely empty. No signs of struggle, no bodies, just abandoned equipment, food still warm on stoves, half-written letters on data pads. Like thousands of people had simply vanished. One line was scrawled on a wall in blood-like resin. "We are not alone. We never were." Admiral Lin stood at the holotable, staring at the footage, expression grim. "Run it again," she said. The screen replayed the drone feed, long corridors filled with clothes, chairs still spinning at mess halls, an entire colony suspended in a state of sudden absence. Kyle, now acting as Earth's intelligence liaison, leaned in with a data pad. "We have no biological residue, no life signs, no trauma on the structure. But something's off. Look at the shadows." He enhanced the video. Everyone leaned closer. At the far end of the hallway, behind the static, a flicker of movement. Something tall. Wrong. Its silhouette didn't match any known species. It wasn't walking. It was gliding. Elira, standing beside Lin, whispered, "How the hell did it get in?" Kyle turned to her. "It didn't get in. It was already there." For years, conspiracy theorists had whispered about a pre-council intelligence, a species so advanced, so elusive, it made even the most ancient empires look like infants. They were called the Null. No recordings, no first contact, just disappearances. Broken ships, dead signals. Most dismissed them as legends, ghost stories told by pilots who'd spent too long in deep space. But now, the ghosts were real, and they were watching. Earth mobilized immediately, not with public panic, not with fire, but with secrecy. If the Null were real, and if they were abducting entire colonies, then Earth had a problem bigger than any rebellion, any remnant of the Council, or any broken alliance. They had an existential threat. And for once, the rest of the galaxy didn't laugh. Even species that once despised Earth sent encrypted transmissions. The message was always the same. "Help us. We're next." Elira was tasked with leading Operation Pale Eye, a deep space recon mission aimed at tracking the Null. No open confrontation, just surveillance, data, understanding. But the fear in Earth's command was clear. If Earth couldn't stop them, no one could. Her ship, EWS Revenant, was a stealth frigate, a prototype wrapped in optical cloaking, powered by black core drives that left no heat trail. Her crew was hand-picked: linguists, AI experts, psychic sensitives, xenoarchaeologists, combat engineers. Kyle came, too. Of course. "Why do I get the feeling we're not coming back from this one?" he joked while strapping in. Elira didn't laugh. "Because you're smarter than you look." They left normal space on the 4th cycle of Terran solar time, using a mapped route through dead council space where Null activity had been suspected. Their first stop was Juno Arcadia, an abandoned mining colony swallowed by radiation storms. Except, it wasn't abandoned anymore. It was quiet. Too quiet. "Status?" Elira asked as the team stepped off the ship in sealed suits. "Radiation levels normal, no EM spikes, but—" "Feel that?" Kale said, glancing around. "What?" He looked up at the sky. "There's no sound." And he was right. No wind, no hum, no insects. Even their suits, usually filled with white noise from internal systems, had gone deathly silent, like the air was holding its breath. They moved through the ruins slowly. Then they found the mirrors. Dozens of them. Large, circular, polished slabs, metal and glass, erected around the center plaza like monuments. But they weren't reflecting their surroundings. They were reflecting stars that didn't exist. In the center of the largest mirror, carved into its surface with a precision not even Earth's best machines could replicate, were 4 words. "We observe the fire." Kyle turned to Elira, voice barely audible. "What the hell does that mean?" She didn't answer. Because behind them, the mirrors began to hum. Soft at first, then louder, and one by one, the stars inside them started to blink. Back aboard the Revenant, the crew scrambled. "Get us out of here now!" Elira ordered. "Coordinates locked. Punching. Wait!" The nav officer froze. "What is it?" He turned, pale. "There's no exit vector. Space is looping." "What?" "We're in a recursion field. We're not moving forward, we're moving in circles." A low-frequency buzz began to shake the ship's core. And then the stars went out. All at once, replaced by a single eye, massive, featureless, hovering outside the viewports, not a ship, not a creature, just an awareness, a presence so massive and cold it felt like time itself was shivering. The Revenant's systems died. Lights flickered, people screamed, but Elira stood still, heart pounding, breath ragged, staring back at the eye, and in that moment something spoke, not aloud, inside her. "You learned violence well, but fire burns both ways." Then, darkness. The crew woke up in orbit, hours gone, logs wiped, systems restored. The eye was gone. But something had changed. Inside the Revenant's main databank was a message. No encryption, no origin trace, just coordinates. Deep, beyond mapped space, outside any galaxy charted by the Council or Earth. Elira read the file in silence. Kyle leaned over her shoulder. "You think it's bait?" "Of course it's bait," she said. He nodded. "You going?" She stared out at the void. "If the Null want to talk, I'm going to make damn sure they talk to the right humans." And back on Earth, the Terran assembly panicked behind closed doors. Because the Null weren't just ghosts anymore. They were real. They were watching. And they had spoken not to diplomats, but to the woman who'd stood before empires and refused to kneel. The coordinates burned in Elira's mind. She didn't know how. She couldn't explain it. But after that encounter with the eye in the void, the numbers weren't just on the datapad. They were inside her. Like the Null hadn't just sent a message, but carved it into the bones of her memory. And every night since, in her sleep, she saw it. A starless sky, a black ocean stretching forever, and voices, thousands of them, whispering truths she could barely understand. "We observed the fire. You rose too fast. You learned too well." They weren't threats, they were warnings, and Elira Voss wasn't the kind of woman who ignored warnings. She walked toward them. EWS Revenant slipped through the outer edge of charted space in absolute silence. Earth Command hadn't authorized this mission. In fact, when Elira submitted the report, they tried to ground her. "You want to chase a hallucination into unmapped space?" Counselor Vance had barked in the assembly chamber. "We're on the edge of collapse and you're chasing ghost coordinates?" "They're not ghosts," Elira had said. "They're gods, or worse, and they're watching us. Wouldn't you rather look them in the eye than wait for them to tear another colony apart?" The assembly voted. The vote came back. Denied. So Elira took the Revenant anyway, without orders, without backup, without permission, just purpose. The further they traveled, the stranger space became. Stars were sparse. Light bent the wrong way. Even the ship's internal chronometers began drifting, time slipping unpredictably between decks. A crew member walked into a hallway and didn't return for 3 hours, though from her point of view she'd only stepped out for 30 seconds. Sleep brought shared dreams. Kyle started hearing voices, not hallucinations, memories, but not his own. "I dreamt I was an insect," he said one night in the mess, "trapped in a glass cage, watching giants pass me by like I didn't exist. It wasn't just a dream, Elira. It was real, like something else's memory." Others experienced the same. Elira felt it too. Each day the air aboard Revenant grew heavier, not from gravity or atmosphere, but from awareness. It was like the ship wasn't alone, like the void itself was watching. On the 12th day, they arrived. Not at a star, not at a planet, but at a wound in space, a tear in the fabric of reality, pulsating with violet light, surrounded by shattered moons and dead constructs that had no design known to man or machine. A rift. Beyond it, null space. "Scanners are blind," the tech officer whispered. "I'm not reading anything past it. No mass, no energy, just absence." Elira stood at the viewport, eyes locked on the swirling void. "Open a channel." "Ma'am, we don't know what's—" "Open it." A second passed. Then a voice, not heard but felt, answered. "You arrived." Everything inside Revenant stopped. Time, sound, motion, and then they were inside. No jump, no transition. One moment they floated before the rift. The next, they were somewhere else. It wasn't space, it wasn't dark, it wasn't light, it was mind. A realm built not of matter, but of meaning. The crew stood on what looked like glass, beneath a sky of mirrored storms. Shapes moved around them. Not beings, not creatures, but thoughts made visible. Memories woven into form. A battlefield here, a birth there. Dying stars and rising empires, all flickering across the space around them like visions in a collective dream. Kyle clutched Elira's arm. "This isn't a ship. This is a library." Then it came. The null, not a single voice, not one entity, but a chorus, a collective, ancient, beyond form or flesh. They did not appear. They unfolded from everything, every storm, every echo, every heartbeat. "We knew your kind would come," they said, "because you were made to reach." Elira stepped forward, her voice steady, though her bones trembled. "You've taken colonies, lives. Why?" "To teach, to test. To see if you remembered." "Remembered what?" The sky split. Above her a memory played. Not human, not alien, just familiar. An ancient world, long before Earth's rise, creatures rising from mud and fire. Not humans, but early minds, seeded across galaxies like wildflowers. "You are not the first, you are not the only, but you are the fastest, the loudest, the most dangerous." Kyle whispered, "They didn't create us." "No," Elira said. "They were watching us long before we even crawled from the oceans. You rose in fire, and fire forgets." She stepped forward again. "What do you want?" The voices changed, softer now, almost sorrowful. "To see if you can be more than vengeance, more than hunger, more than conquerors." A new memory bloomed. The council, at its peak, and behind it, the null, hidden in the corners of their minds, watching. They failed. Then another, Earth's retaliation, the war, the spire, Eleanor's death. You avenged, you endured, but now you stand at the fork. The glass beneath Elira's feet began to crack. Around her, the memories grew violent. Will you burn the galaxy to protect your torch, or will you let it light others? Elira clenched her fists. I'm not here to make excuses or ask for forgiveness. We didn't come to conquer the stars. We came because we were tired of being kept in the dirt. And now you walk among the stars. But what will you do? There was no threat, no demand, only a question. Elira turned to her crew. Kyle, the officers, the engineers. They had seen Earth rise, seen it fight, bleed, rage. But now, they stood before something older than history itself. And it wasn't asking them to kneel, it was asking them to choose. They returned 3 days later, not in time, not in hours, just later. Earth Command scrambled at their return. They were gone for 21 days. But for Elira, it had only been 8. Her ship's log was corrupted. Her crew tested negative for psychic contamination. But all of them had changed. Elira gave one report, 3 sentences. The Null are real. They will not fight us, unless we give them a reason to. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. The Terran Assembly was split. Some wanted to weaponize the knowledge, send fleets into the rift, exploit the memory library. Others wanted to silence the crew, bury the mission, pretend the Null never existed. But Earth Command didn't forget what happened on Edda X7. They remembered the silence, the vanishing, the truth that lingered in the corners of their minds. There are forces in this galaxy that do not speak in war, but in warnings. And now Earth had been warned, not threatened, not attacked, warned. Elira Voss declined another promotion. Instead, she retired from command. Not out of fear, but because she'd seen something greater. And for the first time since Eleanor died, she wanted to help build instead of destroy. She disappeared quietly into the stars, but across Earth space, on colonies, outposts, ships, and settlements, her name carried weight. Not as a war hero, not as a conqueror, but as the first human to look into the mind of the galaxy and walk away unchanged. Or perhaps more human than ever before. 2 years passed. 2 years since Elira Voss vanished from command. Since the EWS Revenant returned from the edge of known space, carrying secrets that made even Earth's most powerful leaders tremble behind closed doors. The Null hadn't attacked. They hadn't demanded territory. They hadn't manipulated politics. They had done something worse. They waited. That silence became the galaxy's most terrifying sound. Earth, meanwhile, didn't stop moving. It couldn't afford to. The Terran Assembly pushed forward, expanding influence, securing old council territories, and reinforcing its borders. Officially, Earth remained a protector, a peacekeeper, a beacon in the dark. But in practice, Earth had become the galaxy's greatest power, and it was beginning to fracture under the weight of that power. On the oceanic world of Delvare, protests exploded outside Earth's administrative outpost. Colonists carried banners reading, "Freedom is not a leash." Armed guards watched from towers. Riot drones hovered like vultures. Inside the command center, Admiral Cora Lynn stood before a dozen holographic feeds from across the galaxy. Red lights pulsed on half of them. Sabotage in the Corinthi Belt. Pirate resurgence in the Etherland Drift. A coordinated rebellion from a previously loyal Terran-aligned world. "What the hell is happening to us?" she muttered. A junior officer answered without looking up. "They think we've become the thing we destroyed." Lynn didn't reply, because part of her feared they were right. In the city of New Geneva, Earth's capital glittered like a beacon from orbit. But beneath its surface, in the shadows of clean skyscrapers and polished war monuments, whispers were rising. Whispers of a woman who vanished. A woman who looked the null in the face and lived. Elira Voss. She had become something more than real, a story, a myth, a question. Where did she go? No official record existed. The assembly had purged her files. Her crew was scattered, reassigned, silenced. But in forgotten corners of fringe worlds, in cantinas, union halls, and whisper networks, people still spoke her name. She's out there, they said, watching, waiting, because she knows something we don't. They were right. Elira hadn't disappeared. She had simply stepped away. After seeing the Null, after speaking with something that existed outside time, history, and form, she realized Earth's struggle had never been about survival. It had always been about identity. Who they were, who they could become, and who they were becoming now. So she left. Not to hide. But to listen. To the colonies. To the broken. To the silenced. She traveled without insignia, without rank. She worked as a technician on a broken freighter, as a translator on an Anthari peace convoy, as a bodyguard for a Sharan refugee. And everywhere she went, she listened. She heard the stories of Earth's broken promises, of corporate-backed governors replacing council oppressors, of orbital garrisons that kept order through fear, of rebels wearing Earth's flag while burning villages to make examples. And worst of all, she saw hope, once burning so brightly after the council fell, now flickering out across entire systems, all in Earth's name. On the mining world of Kisar 5, Elira found a boy, no more than 10. He had a limp, a deep scar down his face. He worked 16-hour shifts in an illegal cobalt refinery owned by a company with Terran assembly backing. She asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. He said, "Gone." That was the moment Elira knew. She couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. Back on Earth, a rare assembly summit was held. The topic was clear: galactic restructuring. Earth had no equal. It controlled 48% of known space. Most colonies couldn't survive without Earth's trade and tech. Councillor Gerard Vance, now the most powerful politician in human space, stood before the assembly and made his move. "The era of soft authority is over," he said. "The galaxy is fragmented, scattered, and Earth is the only force strong enough to unify it, permanently." He paused, then dropped the line he had rehearsed 1,000 times. "It's time we stopped pretending. Earth is not a guest in the stars. We are its new order." Applause erupted from half the chamber. The other half sat frozen, until the doors opened, and Elira Voss walked in. No fanfare, no announcement, just presence and silence. Gasps swept the hall. Vance paled. "Admiral Voss," he said carefully, "you have no standing here." "You're right," she replied. "I'm not here as a soldier." "Then as what?" She walked slowly to the center of the floor. "As a witness." And then she told the truth. About the Null. About the choices Earth had made. About the pain that followed in Earth's wake. Not from war, but from arrogance. "You think peace is order?" she said. "But it's not. Peace isn't what we enforce. It's what we protect, and we've forgotten the difference." Vance snapped. "You'd have us fall back into chaos? Abandon everything we've built?" "No," Elira said. "I'd have us earn it." She pulled something from her coat, a small pendant, Eleanor Grant's. "This started with a school teacher," she said. "Someone who believed in learning, not ruling, who died because the council saw her as insignificant." She held it high. "I fight so no one ever feels that small again." The chamber fell silent. And then a voice rose, from an assembly member long thought loyal to Vance. I second her motion. Then another, and another. The vote was held. Not for domination, but for reformation. A new charter, a new council, not ruled by Earth, but led by all species willing to share power. The Galactic Concordance was born, not as a government, but as an agreement. No empire, no gods, no council, just guardians. Earth retained military oversight, but only by collective vote. No colony could be forcibly governed. Every species held veto power. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And it was the first thing in centuries not built on fear. Elira declined every position offered. She didn't want to lead the Concordance. She didn't want statues, or parades, or rewritten history. She just wanted peace. Real peace. So she returned to the stars, to teach, to heal, to remind. And wherever she went, people remembered that Earth's strength wasn't in weapons, or fleets, or fear. It was in the fire of one woman who refused to forget what they were fighting for. And far beyond the galaxy, in the memory library of the Null, a new scene appeared. A woman standing in a great chamber holding a small pendant. And the fire did not consume her. It lit the way.